Are we live? Okay. Hello, we're live. Hi. A really, really warm welcome. So we're just getting started. So my name's Garavavati. And if you're looking for the London Buddhist Centre's Friday evening class, then you're in the right place. Although you might notice if you've been here before that we're not in the London Buddhist Centre. So I'm speaking to you from the London Buddhist Centre's, well, one of the London Buddhist Centre's women's communities, which is just down the road from the London Buddhist Centre. So I'm really, really pleased to be doing this class from our community this evening. So we're going to start at 7 o'clock. So you can say hello to us if you're just joining us. Say hello in the chat. It'll be really, really nice to hear who you are and where you're from. So as I was saying, my name's Garavavati, and I'm speaking to you from Bethnal Green, and I'm in the one of the London Buddhist Centre's women's communities here. And I thought I might just introduce to you some of the community. So I live in a women's Buddhist community. There's 11 of us, and we range in age from 24 to 74. And we're all practicing Buddhists together. So some of my community are here in our shrine room tonight. So I'm going to ask them to come and say hello. One of them is helping with the tech. So they're all going to sort of gather in around me and say hello to you just now. They look a bit shy, but they're going to come in. So come on in. So this is just as we're warming up. They can say hello. So they need to gather in quite tightly. So yeah, these are my friends I live with. So we can just all give you a wave. Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, so they're also tuning into the class tonight. They're very lucky because they get to be here in real time. But yeah, one of the lovely things, well, it's really unprecedented actually that the Buddhist Centre's had to close. It's never closed. The whole time it's been open the last 40 years, the Buddhist Centre hasn't ever closed. So it's a really unprecedented time for everyone and for us who are part of the community at the Buddhist Centre, and perhaps you're joining us for the first time tonight. But one of the beautiful things about it is that people who can't normally come to the Buddhist Centre can tune in. So really, really warm welcome if it's your first time here, if you're tuning in from far away, if you don't live in London, if you've never been to the Buddhist Centre before, but you've been tuning in just online, really, really warm welcome. So yeah, do say hello in the chat. I think Katrine's going to let me know if people are saying hi. Anyone saying hi?
Yeah, we've got a few people. So we've
Great.
got Sadaruchi from Mexico City.
Oh, hi, Sadaruchi from Mexico. That's amazing. Wonderful. Hello. Really warm welcome.
And we've got Sarah Whiteley.
Hi, Sarah.
Marriage.
Hello.
Dorothy from Lancashire.
And Dorothy. Oh, great. From Lancashire. Welcome. Yeah, so really, really warm welcome. And how many people have we got tuning in just now?
So we've got 47.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Well, yeah, you wouldn't all fit in our shrine room here in my community. But it's very, very nice to have you joining us. Very, very nice to have you joining us via YouTube. Yeah, so yeah, it's just coming up to 7 o'clock. So I think we'll get started. And I think people will be joining us over the next couple of minutes. Yeah, so this week we've been following through particular themes, thinking about well, what we need personally, but also what the world needs at this time. So as I was just saying, it's a really unprecedented time, what's happening in the world with this global crisis, really. And it's not just coronavirus. It really seems to me at the moment, looking out into the world, that the world really, really is on fire. And you might have noticed in your everyday life that life, well, it's not always easy living in lockdown. So what we wanted to do this week in the classes is think about different topics that would be helpful to talk about, to see what the Buddha had to say about particular things. And tonight I'm going to be talking about anger and conflict. So I'm going to just say a little bit about what the Buddha has to say about that. It's a really, really big subject, actually, and I'm giving a talk next Wednesday. I'm going to say a little bit more. I'll be following on a little bit more. So you can tune in again on Wednesday. And the format of tonight, if you haven't joined us before, so I'll say a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about anger and about conflict and what the Buddha has to say about that, and what we can do in our own lives in relationship to those strong feelings or difficult situations. Then we'll meditate. And then there's going to be an opportunity to ask questions. So you can ask questions via the chat, and well, I can't promise that I'll answer them, but I'll see if I can address your questions. So if, as I'm talking, any questions arise, or when you're meditating, if questions arise, then you can ask them at the end of the session, and we'll finish around 8 o'clock. Okay, so yeah, so I've been thinking about this topic of anger, and I really wanted to start by just saying that well, anger is natural. It's like a natural response, and it's a really, really human emotion, and we will have all experienced it. In different situations, anger will arise, and I think it's really, really important to acknowledge that it is just a natural human response. And in a way, it's not necessarily bad. Anger has a lot of energy in it, and it usually has this sort of quality where it wants to break through. So anger in itself isn't really bad, but it's when we're not careful with anger, when we let anger turn into hatred, when we let it harm ourselves and harm other people, that's when it starts to have negative consequences, or painful consequences for ourselves and for others. So what I wanted to start off with was by drawing out this sort of distinction between anger and hatred. That actually the energy and the sort of raw feeling or emotion of anger isn't necessarily a bad thing if we can stay in relationship to it and be really, really careful to not let it turn into hatred. So I thought I'd say a little bit about hatred. I don't know why, but I love talking about hatred. Yes, yeah, anyway, don't know what that says about me, but anyway, so I'll say a little bit about hatred. Hatred, it's such a strong emotion, and it doesn't really serve any purpose which is helpful. Again, it's natural. We all, as human beings, will all have sort of seeds of hatred within us, and it will arise under different circumstances in different situations. And if our anger goes unchecked, it can really easily turn into hatred. And I was thinking about 2 different forms of anger, or 2 different ways we can respond to anger. So one is perhaps that we're quite quick to temper. We get easily angry, and it sort of spills out. And maybe we're quite confrontational. We're not afraid to get into conflict. We can have a lot of energy in that. The other one is perhaps where we try to repress our anger. So anger arises, it feels scary, so we try to hold it in and repress it, and usually that leads to a sort of seething resentment. Either way, both of those things mean that anger will turn into hatred, whether it's directly expressed out in the world or whether it's internalized, and it sort of gathers its energy through sort of like thoughts. And the emotion of sort of resentment is sort of cultivated and dwelled upon in the heart and in the mind. So the Buddha was really, really uncompromising about hatred. He taught that there's no place for hatred, and I think this is a really, really strong medicine, actually, because to get into hate, to feel anger and to let anger turn into hatred can make us feel powerful. It can make us feel strong. It can feel like it's a protection. And sometimes, for me anyway, it feels like there's no other choice but to get angry and to let anger turn into hatred. But the Buddha would say there's no place for hatred. And he taught that you could never pacify hatred with hatred. So if you meet anger and hatred with more hatred, you'll just get more hatred. I mean, it's quite simple, actually. It makes sense, doesn't it? It's like hatred plus hatred equals hatred multiplied. So he would say, in order to address hatred, we need to cultivate love. And in a way, for me to just say that, even for myself, maybe for you as well, on an intellectual level, I can get on board with it. It sounds like a good idea. It sounds like a good idea not to hate. It sounds like a good idea to cultivate love. But when we bring that into our lives, into our everyday small frustrations or irritations, and when we take that out into the world and see what's happening in the world, it can be really challenging to find another response that isn't a response of hatred. Or yeah, let's stay with that. So what do we do with our anger? If we don't want the anger to turn into hatred, what do we do with our anger? So I've said that it's not helpful to repress it, to just hold anger in. Doesn't help. And to let it explode out over everyone in righteous indignation also won't help. So what do we do when we feel the anger? What's the solution? So there's a middle way between those 2 points. What we can do is we can see if we can be really, really aware. We can practice this ethical vigilance of what is arising in our experience. So we can notice the feelings in the body. We can notice our reactions, our responses. We could notice even, I don't know, wanting to sort of lash out or assert ourselves. And we can make a choice to cultivate something else, to cultivate interest, to stay with our experience, to not try and hold on and repress, and to not try and let everything spill out. I think what's really, really tempting for me anyway is it's really, really tempting to start to blame others. So to make ourselves a victim of a situation and to blame other people. It's really, really, really tempting. And if we can not do that, if we can just stay with the visceral experience, then we can feel the energetic quality of anger, and something more creative can come in. Something else can come into our experience to the point that we can be aware of what's going on in our direct experience. We create a little gap where we're not completely consumed by it. We can look more deeply into what it's telling us. What it's telling us about ourselves and what it's telling us about the world at large. I'm just going to pause and have a sip of water. So we've got a choice, and to go into blame will only bind us tighter and tighter around ourselves. And the interesting thing is that when we blame other people, it's interesting. We can feel hatred in response. Say we feel hatred or anger in response to someone. They've done something. I really like what one of my friends says. She says, other people can be a complete nightmare. It's not that everyone's not always going to treat us well. Sometimes people will really hurt us. They will betray us. They will commit atrocities out in the world. There are some things that feel unforgivable. Or just on a small scale, sometimes it seems that people are really, really irritating. People can do things which irritate us. So, but if we blame other people and we get caught up in how it's someone else's fault, we actually bring ourselves closer and closer to the object of our hatred, and that makes us suffer even more. We suffer even more deeply. When we're dwelling and blaming other people, we sort of bind ourselves onto ourselves and onto our suffering, but we also bind ourselves more tightly to the object of our hatred. So it just creates more and more pain. So if we can really, really take responsibility for our own minds and see that we're cultivating the anger, that we're cultivating the hatred, that can be a point of freedom. And it can be an opportunity to look and see, what are we making this situation mean about us? And for me, I find that really, really, really exciting then. So then it becomes an opportunity to see, what stories do I create? How do I create a sense of myself? So it's so easy, isn't it, to sort of interpret different things which happen to us. I was thinking, I don't know, if someone doesn't text us back, it's easy to make that mean something about us, make that mean that they don't like us, they're too busy for us, they haven't got time for us. We can create a whole story around that, couldn't we? Or, I don't know, the absent lover, that we're not lovable. If someone leaves us, we can make that mean so much about ourselves. And I think in this time as well of, I'm sure a lot of you tuning in, you might be in two different situations. Some of you might be in really close proximity to your loved ones, which brings its own challenges. Some of you might be separated from your loved ones, and that might have gone on for a long time. Both of those situations are painful, and both of them can lead to frustration. And both of those things can lead to us creating lots of stories around ourselves and other people. So we're trying to really look and see, what are we making the situation mean about ourselves? And we can see as well what's at stake. What's at stake if this person has upset us or betrayed us, or this situation is difficult? What is that threatening in our sense of self? When we can not sort of go into the stories and we can stay with our experience, we can look more deeply into what's underneath the stories. And for myself, what I see is that hatred or anger can make me feel powerful. It can make me feel in control. It can make it feel like there's a barrier of protection between me and the object of the hatred. And all of those things are sort of false. They're really, really precarious. And hatred itself is painful. It's really, really painful to have a mind of hate. And you'll all know this for yourselves when you feel in good relationship with yourself and in good relationship with the world. It's so pleasant, isn't it? It's just so lovely to feel in harmony and to feel at ease. So we know that to get into anger and hatred is painful, and yet we still do it again and again. So we need to be really, really patient with ourselves as it arises. So the thing that we really want to guard is our mind. We want to guard our states of mind. So in Buddhism, one of the core teachings is that actions have consequences, and actions are of the mind, of speech, and of body. So our thoughts are considered to be actions, and anything that springs from a place of hatred will bring suffering. So if you're in a state of frustration, irritation, or maybe it is like a burning hatred, and if you cultivate lots of thoughts blaming the situation or blaming other people, and then you act out of that place, it will bring suffering for yourself and for other people. So it's really, really simple. We just practice noticing, what are we doing with our minds? What are we bringing into being through our thoughts, through our emotions? And then we're seeing if we can be with that on a physical level, be with that, feel it in the body, and encourage it in a more positive direction. And that's what we really do in the Metta Bhavana practice. So when we do the loving kindness meditation, we practice being receptive to our experience. We tune into our body, we tune into the heart, and we just see what's happening. It's a bit like testing the soil. We see what's arising. And the loving kindness meditation, the Metta Bhavana practice, is so good because it brings everyone into the practice. It brings people we love. It brings the good friend. It brings ourselves. It brings the neutral person. And it brings the difficult person. So usually the difficult person is the object of our hatred or the sort of object of our anger. So it brings everyone into the practice. And it gives us an opportunity to see, well, where are we at with all of those different people? And then we can spread out through the whole world. So, there's countless people that we'll never get to meet, but they've touched our lives. So in the Metta Bhavana, in the loving kindness meditation, we get to see if we can cultivate this open heart and this state of mind which is without boundaries. And we see if that could spread out to the world in an imaginative sense, but also in a felt sense. When we're stuck in anger and hatred, our heart is really tight and closed and small. And the next time you feel angry with someone, or you feel this sort of wanting to get your own back, or you go into all those stories about how it's their fault, you could stop and just feel into your body and just notice, how does it feel around your chest? How does it feel around the heart? And probably it will feel quite tight, like you're holding on. That's what it feels like for me. I think it's the same for other people. I'm just looking around the room at my community and they're sort of nodding at me. That's good. And we hold on to our suffering, we hold on to our pain, we hold on to our hatred, and it doesn't serve us. So when we bring awareness to it and when we feel that we're holding on, what can sometimes magically happen is, by really feeling the holding, by feeling the pain of that holding, sometimes we can let go. And usually what we let go into is something quite unknown. It's familiar, but it's unknown. Usually the places where we hold, the places where we defend ourselves, they can feel quite safe. But usually they're painful as well. So when we have the courage to really feel and to acknowledge what's going on, when we have the courage to feel the pain actually of the situation that we're in, however small or big it is, then there's an opportunity for something to let go. And what's on the other side of that letting go is always a mystery. And in my experience, it's usually beautiful. Sometimes I can be flooded with a sadness, but it's usually a deep, beautiful, grounding sadness. And usually, maybe always actually, what's on the other side of that holding when we do let go is connection. So ultimately, hatred brings us, it sort of creates isolation. It feels lonely. When we can be in touch with our own suffering and when we can meet our own experience with an open heart, we step into direct connection with ourselves and with others. So yes, there's every reason really to try to keep moving beyond hatred. And I haven't touched on conflict. There's not so much time to say that, but what I did want to say was not to be afraid of honest confrontation, not to be afraid of how can I say it, of coming into direct relationship with other people. There's a lovely slogan which says, better honest collision than dishonest collusion. So it's really, really important that we do have honest communication with other people, and we're not afraid of stepping into direct relationship. That's much, much better than just people pleasing and just going along with whatever we think other people might want. That usually actually does lead to more and more resentment. But as I said at the start, we'll have different tendencies. Some people might be more confrontational than others. I think I'm definitely the sort of unafraid of confrontation. So it will look different for different people. Different situations will look different for different people. And it leads me nicely on into my last point, which is, if we're in a difficult situation, or even not such a difficult situation, we're just feeling irritated or frustrated, it's really, really important to speak to our friends about it. The founder of this Buddhist tradition, Ergen Sangharakshita, someone asked him, they call him Bante, this lovely word for teacher. Bante, what do you do when you feel angry? And he paused and he thought for a while. And he said, oh, well, I talk to my friends. When I feel angry, I talk to my friends. And I can't recommend that enough, to speak to our friends about our difficulties. And that's what's really, really important about coming together. While the Buddha Centre's closed, we can still come together in these ways to create these circles of friendship where we are trying to bring something positive into being. We're trying to live a meaningful life. We're trying to be of benefit in the world. So that sense of community is really, really, really important. And it's based on friendship. So it's really, really great to come here together, and you can engage with us in the chat at the end to ask your questions, and hopefully that might be the spark of connection. So talking is really, really, really important to help us be more aware of what's going on in our experience. So yes, talking to friends, meditating, refining our minds and our hearts, and seeing if we can practice awareness outside of meditation to notice what's happening in our experience, and to see if we can try to avoid going into blame and becoming a victim, and really, really take responsibility for our own minds and our own hearts. So with that, we're going to meditate now. So we're going to see if we can refine our minds and our hearts. And we're going to do a practice of the Metta Bhavana. So I'll lead us through the meditation practice, and we'll start off by just really seeing if we can really ground into the body. And I'll guide us through the stages of the practice. So if you haven't done the Metta Bhavana practice, the loving kindness practice before, I'll guide us through. So yeah, just set yourselves up in a comfortable posture. If you're sitting on a chair, you might want to bring a cushion into the small of your back. Make sure your feet are flat on the ground. And we'll just settle down. So when you're ready, you can close your eyes. And at the end of the meditation practice, I'll read you the Dhammapada verses, which are really addressing these things that I've been talking about this evening. So let's start by just seeing if we can bring the attention down into the body. And let the weight drop down through your legs, down through your feet, and down through your sit bones. So there's a sense of groundedness and a sense of stability. And just let the spine be long. You could imagine the crown of your head being drawn up towards the ceiling by a golden thread. So the body's upright, alert. The shoulders are relaxing, softening down your back. And just seeing if you can let your body soften and relax. So just let your face soften. Muscles around your eyes, cheeks, your mouth and your tongue relaxed. And there's no need to talk now, so your throat can also soften. The sides of your neck releasing. And you can let that softness travel down your arms, into your hands. And see if you can just stay a while with the sensations in your hands. Letting your hands be still. And feeling all the tingling, the changing sensations within your hands. Palms, fingertips. And bring the attention to your lower belly. And as you breathe in, let the inhale just soften the walls of your belly. And bring that awareness up to the chest and see if you can just feel the breath through your chest. And notice how as you breathe in, the chest rises, the ribcage expands. And as you breathe out, the chest draws in a little, drops down. And don't worry if you get distracted. Just including the breath in your experience. And just grounding the attention through the body, and particularly through the chest. And see if you can come a bit more deeply into the chest and gather your attention. Feel around the heart. And it can be a bit like feeling around in the dark. There might be quite strong sensation around the heart center, or it might be quite subtle. Or there could just be a sort of blank nothingness. Whatever's arising, can you just take the breath to the heart center? And as you breathe in, let there be a softening, a gentle opening. And as you breathe out, just letting go a little, shoulders relaxing, jaw releasing. And this can be like the first stage of our Metta Bhavana practice. We're just touching into the heart center with the breath, turning towards the heart. When you get distracted, just very, very clearly, very, very directly, bring your attention back to the body. And really feeling the body. Breathing into the heart center. And any small openings or feelings of connection, just breathe into those. turn your attention towards those. Let them deepen. And breathing in this kindly breath. And staying with that felt sense of the heart, bring to mind a good friend. And see if you can just feel the heart's response. And look for any small feelings of friendliness, kindness, openness. Bring your attention to them. And see if you can keep relaxing into the heart center. And then letting go of the good friend and bringing to mind a neutral person. And seeing if you can keep that felt sense of the heart center. And finding a point of connection between yourself and this neutral person. So allowing this sense of open, kindly awareness to manifest as we bring to mind the neutral person. And then letting go of the neutral person and bringing to mind someone that we're having difficulty with. And as you bring that person to mind, see if you can just feel around the heart. Can you stay with whatever's there or not there? You might notice where the mind wants to go, particular stories. When that happens, just see if you can just come back to the direct sensations in the body, particularly around the heart. And not feeling the sensations in order for them to go away, just to feel them, really fully experiencing them. And perhaps noticing what type of relationship are we creating with this person. And seeing if you can bring a kindly awareness to your experience and to them. And now start to broaden that sense out. So bringing to mind yourself, the good friend, the neutral person, and the difficult person. Just having a felt sense of all four of you. Seeing if you can keep this sense of open-heartedness, connection. Can you cultivate a state of mind without boundaries? Can that start to flow out into the world? Bringing to mind different beings throughout the world. People you know, people you don't know. All beings. Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows, even as the cartwheel follows the hoof of the ox drawing the cart. Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows, like a shadow that never departs. Those who entertain such thoughts as, they abused me, they beat me, they conquered me, they robbed me, will not still their hatred. Those who do not entertain such thoughts as, they abused me, they beat me, they conquered me, they robbed me, will still their hatred. Not by hatred are hatreds ever pacified here in the world. They are pacified by love. This is the eternal law. Others do not realize that we are all heading for death. Those who do realize it will compose their quarrels. So just start to let go of the meditation and just sit quietly for a few moments as you bring the meditation to a close. And then when you're ready, opening your eyes. Good. Okay, so we've got a little bit of time now. So if you've got any questions, do ask your questions in the chat, and Katrine's going to feed me the questions, and I'll see if I can answer them.
So we've got a question from Marcia.
Yeah.
So is loving kindness something we create or something that just exists out there?
Oh, that's a lovely question, Marcia. Yeah. So, well, that's a good question. I think it is something that exists, but it's also a natural state to be loving. So the way that I think about it is that we can choose to participate in love. It is something that we can cultivate. So we do this Metta Bhavana practice. We can cultivate a more loving state of mind. But it's really lovely, the verse that I was reading out, saying that in a way, love is like a sort of natural law in the world. It's a truth. To be human, we have the capacity to love. And I'm sure you will have experienced this, Mercy, that it feels like a force that's sort of outside of us and within us. So at different times in our practice, sometimes we might choose to have a more active cultivation where we're trying to really cultivate loving kindness, or we might choose just to sit back and sort of drop into sort of the love which is evident all around us and which can flow around us. I think it's quite nice actually to look for where you can see love sort of manifesting in the world. You can see it in nature, you can see it in art, you can see it in other people. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I hope that addresses your question, Mercia. Thanks for asking it. Yeah.
We've got a question from Aaron. What happens if you don't feel very much when you bring people to mind? So you just feel a bit numb.
Yeah.
This happens sometimes when I'm not sure what to do with
Yeah, really good question. I can really relate to that. I experience that quite a lot actually, where when I sit to meditate, I can feel quite numb. And what I can get into is feeling like, oh no, it's not working, or I'm not working properly. Either the meditation's not working, or somehow I'm slightly defective. And I can also sometimes have an idea that I should be feeling really, really loving, especially when I bring the good friend to mind. Um, so don't worry, it's really, really common not to feel very much, and it's fine. This practice that we do when we do the Metta Bhavana practice, the way that we've just done it now is quite a receptive way. So we're tuning in to the feeling. So if you tuned in and you didn't feel like much was there, the practice then is really, really to see if you can stay with that feeling of not very much, which is quite difficult. It's quite challenging, but see if you can just pay attention to, well, what is there? There'll definitely be something happening in your experience. So see if you can tune into that. And then what I'd suggest is looking for really, really small seeds of anything which feels, any sense of feeling actually to start. And then you could look maybe for pleasure, you could look for a feeling of relaxation, you could look for a feeling of openness or kindness in your experience. And if that's not there, if you're just feeling irritated, then stay with that. That's then the practice. So sometimes underneath the numbness is an emotion. This is in my experience, underneath numbness is something that I don't want to come into a relationship with. So it could be anger, or it could be irritation, or it could be sadness. So then the practice is to bring a really, really loving awareness to that. So in a way, you can't really go wrong if you bring awareness and a sort of open mind and heart to your experience. I hope that answers the question. It's very strange to not have the person in front of me nodding and giving me the feedback, but yeah. Yeah, so go on, Katrina.
Okay, so a question from Prani Hidayah.
Oh, hi, Prani Hidayah.
So how can we learn to recognize that we create much of our own suffering without falling into self-hatred or blaming ourselves?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So how can we, the question was, how could we recognize that we're causing a lot of our own suffering without falling into hatred or blaming ourselves? Well, I guess in a way, it's that key thing, isn't it, about if we fall into hatred and blame of ourselves, then we're just falling into hatred again. So it's seeing if we can come back to the pain of the experience. Usually when we notice, when we feel suffering, we want to blame someone in order to feel a sense of control. So we want to either blame other people or blame ourselves. But that will create more and more suffering. So if we can stay with the initial pain of the experience, then we can go beyond blame. And just knowing that it's natural, because we have a human body and a human mind, we will experience suffering. We will make mistakes and we will create our own suffering. It's part of being a conditioned being. That's what we do. So it's okay. And if we can bring kindness and awareness to that, then we can go beyond blame and hatred, whether that's throwing it out into the world or turning it in on ourselves. Yeah.
Is there time for some more?
Yeah, maybe one more question. Yeah.
Okay. You've been asked if you can repeat the questions I asked.
Oh, sorry, I didn't repeat the questions. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, so the question from B. So I find it really hard to bring to mind a difficult person.
Yeah.
Should it be someone we don't like, or could it be a person from our past, or should they be in our lives now?
Is that Lee?
B.
Oh, B. Hi, B. Yeah, so B's asking, saying she finds it hard to bring to mind a difficult person, and she's wondering if it should be someone in our lives now or someone from our past. So any difficult person will do. Yeah, it's okay if it's someone from your past. It's okay if it's someone who's in your life now. And it's quite common, actually. I hear that quite often, that people find it hard to think of a difficult person. Sometimes when you're first starting the practice as well, you can think of a good friend who you've mildly irritated with, or perhaps someone that you've like where the communication's gone a bit awry. It's anywhere where there's a slight feeling of disconnection, even could be the difficult person. So yeah, it doesn't need to be someone who's immediately in your life. It could be someone from your past. I mean, I do think it is quite helpful to choose people who are immediate in your life, because then it's really heartening and gives you confidence, because you get to see that the practice has an effect in real time. But it's also completely valid to do this practice with someone from your past. Yeah. Okay, so maybe just one more question.
Okay, so someone is asking, Shani is asking, if the meditation we just did differs to the Metta Bhavana practice when you recite, may they be well, may they be happy, when you bring someone to mind.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so Shani is asking, is the meditation practice we just did different from the Metta Bhavana practice, where we use the phrases and we say, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering, and may you make progress? So it's the same meditation, but it's just a slightly different approach. So when we do the practice and we say the phrases, that's how it's traditionally taught, and that's a way of really trying to cultivate metta. It's very, very active. We're trying to bring loving kindness into being, or call on this sort of force of loving kindness in the world to sort of move through us. The practice which I just led through is a Metta Bhavana practice, but it's a more receptive practice, a more receptive way of doing the practice, where we're tuning into how we're feeling and staying with the sort of heart's response. So it's a more of a receptive way of doing the practice. Okay, so we're coming up to time now, so it's 8 o'clock. So I think it's time to sign off. So just to say thanks very, very much for joining us. Really nice to have you with us this evening. Yeah, the last thing to say is if you want to help the Buddhist Centre to keep thriving, you can donate to us. So tonight I'm offering my time freely, very, very happily, and all of the things that we offer at the Buddhist Centre and online as well, we give them freely. So we want these teachings to be available for everyone. But what helps us to do that is if people can donate in order to support us to do that. So if you've got the means to donate, then I'd really recommend donating to the Buddhist Centre. It will be a very good investment of your money. So if you can donate to us, and you can participate in this culture of generosity to help these teachings go out to as many people as possible. So I think one of our tech hosts is going to be posting the link in the chat. So you can click on that if you want to give. So yeah, so that's it from me. Thanks very, very much for joining us. I'm going to be back next Wednesday for the evening class. Next Monday, more activities will resume. So we'll sign off and see you again. Bye.